The door clicked open softer than it should have. Adrian stepped inside, expecting silence, but instead he found tension thick enough to taste. Lena stood in the living room, frozen. Her wine glass trembled in her hand. "You weren't supposed to be home." Adrian smiled. Plans changed. Her fingers began to shake. And in that moment, before any truth was spoken, everything between them had already begun to fall apart. The city of Chicago stretched endlessly beyond the glass walls of the Cole penthouse, its skyline glowing under the slow descent of dusk. Cars crawled below like veins pulsing with quiet urgency, their headlights flickering against steel and glass. Inside, everything was still, too still. Adrian Cole stepped out of the elevator and into his private foyer, the soft hum of the building fading behind him as the doors slid shut. He loosened his tie, slightly rolling his shoulders, as if shedding the weight of a trip that had ended sooner than expected. 3 days in New York. Cut short by a last-minute cancellation. A meeting postponed, a client unavailable, a minor inconvenience. Or so it should have been. He reached for the door key already in hand, but paused for just a second. There was something he couldn't name it yet. A faint unease, like stepping into a room where a conversation had just stopped. Then he unlocked it. The door opened with a quiet click. Warm light spilled into the hallway. And there she was. Lena stood in the center of the living room, framed by the amber glow of the chandelier. She wore a silk blouse the color of ivory, her dark hair falling loosely over her shoulders. In her hand, a glass of red wine caught the light, trembling just enough to reflect something fragile beneath the surface. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Adrian took in the scene, the untouched couch, the faint scent of perfume lingering heavier than usual, the subtle disarray of a cushion that had been moved and hastily put back. Lena's eyes widened. Not in surprise. In fear. "You weren't supposed to be home." The words slipped out before she could catch them. Adrian felt something shift inside his chest, not sharp, not explosive, but slow and heavy like a stone sinking into deep water. He smiled. Plans changed. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him with deliberate calm. The click echoed louder than it should have. Lena didn't move. Her fingers tightened around the wine glass. "Adrian, I thought you were in New York until Friday." "I was," he said, setting his bag down near the entryway. "Things got canceled." A pause. Too long. Too quiet. He walked past her, brushing close enough to feel the tension radiating from her skin. He could almost hear her heartbeat, or maybe it was his own. "Were you expecting someone?" he asked casually. Lena blinked. "What? No. Why would you... You just seemed... surprised." "I am surprised," she said quickly. Too quickly. "You didn't tell me you were coming back early." Adrian nodded slowly, as if accepting the explanation. As if nothing about this felt wrong, but everything did. He moved into the kitchen, opening the fridge, scanning its contents without really seeing them. His reflection stared back at him from the stainless steel, composed, controlled, unreadable. Behind him, Lena finally set her glass down. Too carefully. "I was just about to take a shower," she said, her voice steadier now, but still carrying that faint tremor. Long day. Yes. Another lie. Or maybe not a lie, just not the truth. Adrian closed the fridge. "Mind if I join you later?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder with a faint, almost playful smile. Lena hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. But it was enough. "Of course not," she said. He watched her as she turned and walked toward the bedroom. Her posture was perfect controlled, but her steps were just slightly too fast. Like someone trying to leave a room before something catches up to them. The bedroom door closed, and Adrian was alone. The silence returned heavier now. He exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair as his gaze drifted back across the apartment. Everything looked the same. Exactly the same. And yet it wasn't. His eyes landed on the coffee table. 2 glasses, one with wine, the other empty. He stared at it for a long moment, then slowly he walked over, touched the rim, still warm. Adrian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Not anger, Not yet. Something colder. Something quieter. He straightened, turning his gaze toward the hallway where Lena had disappeared. The sound of running water echoed faintly from the bathroom. He smiled again. But this time, there was nothing warm about it. Morning arrived gently over Chicago, the pale light of dawn slipping through the floor-to-ceiling windows like something cautious, almost hesitant to disturb what lingered in the apartment. Adrian was already awake. He stood barefoot in the kitchen, one hand wrapped around a cup of black coffee gone lukewarm, the other resting flat against the marble counter. He hadn't slept much, not because of noise, but because of silence. Behind him, the bedroom door creaked open. Lena stepped out wrapped in a soft gray robe, her hair still damp from the shower. She looked composed, almost effortlessly so. If someone had taken a picture at that moment, it would have fit perfectly into the curated illusion she maintained online. Morning, she said, her voice light. Adrian turned slightly, offering a small smile. Morning. She walked past him, brushing a kiss against his cheek. Brief, practiced. Too practiced. He didn't move. You're up early, she added, opening the cabinet for a mug. Jet lag, he replied. A lie. But an easy one. Lena nodded, pouring herself coffee. You should try to rest more today. You've been working too much. Adrian watched her from the corner of his eye. There it was again, that tone. Concern, but distant. Like she was reciting something expected, not something felt. I might, he said. But he knew he wouldn't, because now he was watching. It started small. So small, it could have been nothing. Lena's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter as she stepped into the bedroom to change. Adrian wasn't looking for it, but he noticed it anyway. The screen lit up briefly, illuminating a name, just a first initial, M. The notification disappeared before he could read more. He didn't move toward it, didn't touch it. But something inside him registered it quietly, precisely like a puzzle piece being set aside for later. Lena returned moments after, dressed in a fitted blazer and heels, her expression calm. Do you have meetings today? She asked. A few, Adrian replied. Another lie. He had canceled them all. He wanted to stay. Observe. Good, she said, grabbing her phone just a second too quickly. I'll be out most of the afternoon. For what? She hesitated, just slightly. Lunch with Claire, she answered. Adrian nodded. Claire. A safe name. Convenient. He took a sip of his coffee, eyes steady on her. What time? Around 1. Maybe I'll join, he said casually. Lena froze. Not dramatically. Just enough. Oh. I don't think that would work, she said, forcing a small laugh. It's more of a girl's thing. Of course it was. Adrian smiled faintly. Right. Another piece. By noon, the apartment was empty. Or at least it should have been. Adrian sat in his home office, the door slightly ajar, staring at his laptop without seeing the screen. His mind replayed every moment from the past 12 hours, dissecting tone, timing, silence. He wasn't guessing anymore. He was calculating. At 12:47 p.m., Lena's location pinged briefly on their shared calendar app. A restaurant. Not the one Claire usually preferred. Adrian leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. Still, he didn't confront her, not yet. Because something told him this wasn't about catching her. It was about understanding how far it had gone. That evening, Lena returned home with a brightness that felt artificial. Hey, she called out, slipping off her heels near the door. You're still here. Adrian stepped out of his office. Took the day off. Must be nice, she teased lightly. Her smile was perfect. Too perfect. He studied her face, searching for cracks for something real beneath the performance. How was lunch with Claire good? She said immediately. We talked about her new job, her crazy boss, you know how she is. Adrian nodded slowly. I might text her later, he said. It's been a while. Lena's expression flickered. Just for a second. Yeah, you should. But her voice lacked conviction. Another crack. Days passed. The pattern repeated. Messages deleted too quickly. Calls taken in another room. Excuses layered with just enough detail to feel believable but not enough to feel true. Adrian noticed everything. The way Lena smiled at her phone when she thought no one was watching. The way she lingered just a little longer before leaving the apartment. the way she avoided eye contact during certain conversations, especially when he asked simple questions. And most of all, the distance. It wasn't loud, it wasn't obvious, but it was there. A space growing between them filled with things unsaid. One night, Adrian lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling. Lena slept facing away from him, her breathing soft and even. He studied her silhouette in the dim light. Once this closeness had meant something, now it felt like standing next to a stranger. His eyes drifted to the nightstand. Her phone rested there, silent, still. For a moment he considered it. Just reaching out, just checking. It would be easy, too easy. But Adrian didn't move. Because he didn't want fragments anymore. He wanted the whole truth. And something told him he was getting closer. Across the city, in a quiet corner of an upscale bar, Lena sat alone. Or at least that's what it looked like. Her fingers wrapped tightly around a glass she hadn't touched. "You're tense," a voice said softly. She looked up. Marcus Hale slid into the seat across from her, his presence calm, controlled, dangerously so. "I can't keep doing this," Lena whispered. Marcus studied her unfazed. "Then don't. It's not that simple. It never is," he said. A pause. Heavy. Complicated. "Does he suspect anything?" Marcus asked. Lena hesitated. Her mind flashed back to Adrian's eyes, the way he watched her now. Not with love. Not with anger. But with something else. Something unreadable. "I don't know," she admitted. Marcus leaned back slightly, his expression thoughtful. "Then you should figure that out," he said. Because if Adrian did know, this wasn't just an affair anymore, it was a countdown. Back in the penthouse, Adrian stood by the window staring out at the city lights. His reflection stared back at him, calm, still, waiting. The cracks were no longer subtle, they were forming a pattern. And soon they would break. It didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic reveal. No single moment where everything shattered into clarity. Instead, it began with something small enough to ignore and impossible to forget. A receipt, folded twice, carelessly, left in the pocket of Lena's coat. Adrian hadn't been looking for it. He wasn't that man, not yet. But that morning, as he reached for his own jacket in the hallway closet, her coat slipped slightly from its hanger, brushing against his arm. Something inside the pocket crinkled a faint, insignificant sound. He stilled. For a moment, he almost walked away. Almost. But then, his hand moved, slow, deliberate. He reached into the pocket and pulled it out. A receipt from a restaurant, not unusual. Except the date. 2 days ago. The time. 1:12 p.m. Lunch with Claire. Adrian's eyes moved down the paper. 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine. He stared at it for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he folded it back exactly the way it had been. Placed it back into the pocket, hung the coat as it was. No disruption, no trace. But inside him, something shifted. Not breaking, not yet, just tightening. The name came later, not through confrontation, but through carelessness. Lena had fallen asleep on the couch that night, her phone resting loosely in her hand. The television cast flickering shadows across the room, muted voices filling the silence between them. Adrian stood in the doorway, watching her. There was something almost peaceful about her like this, unaware, unprotected, honest without trying to be. He stepped closer. Slowly. Her phone buzzed. Once. Soft. The screen lit up. And this time, he saw it clearly. Marcus. No initial. No ambiguity. Just a name. And beneath it, "I miss you already." Adrian didn't pick up the phone. Didn't unlock it. He didn't need to. Because in that moment, everything aligned. The receipt, the messages, the hesitation, the distance. Marcus. The name echoed in his mind, not as a question, but as a conclusion. Marcus Hale. The recognition came quietly. Too quietly. Adrian walked back into his office, closing the door behind him without sound. He sat at his desk, staring at nothing for a moment before opening his laptop. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. then began to move. Search. Marcus Hale. The results appeared instantly. Of course they did. Marcus wasn't a hidden man. He was visible, successful, connected, a financier, investment strategist, frequently featured in business magazines, photographed at charity galas, corporate events, private fundraisers. Adrian clicked on one of the articles. A picture loaded. And there he was, confident, polished, effortlessly composed. The kind of man people trusted or wanted to. Adrian leaned back slightly, studying the image. Not anger, not jealousy, something colder. Assessment. Then another detail surfaced. A memory. 3 months ago, a deal. A large-scale development project Adrian had secured after weeks of negotiation. The investor backing it had been indirect. The funding came through layers of intermediaries, but one name had been mentioned in passing, briefly. Marcus Hale. Adrian's jaw tightened just slightly. So it wasn't random. It wasn't distant. Their lives had already crossed. He just hadn't seen it. Days passed, but Adrian no longer experienced them the same way. Time didn't move forward. It deepened. Everything became sharper, more deliberate. He watched Lena differently now. Not as a husband trying to understand his wife, but as a man observing a pattern, a system, a truth revealing itself piece by piece. When she smiled at her phone, he noticed. When she stepped out onto the balcony to take a call, he noticed. When she said she was just tired instead of coming to bed, he noticed. Every detail mattered. Every silence spoke. But he still didn't confront her because the realization hadn't ignited him. It had consumed him, quietly, completely. One evening, Lena stood in front of the mirror adjusting her earrings before dinner. Adrian leaned against the doorway, watching her reflection. "You're going out?" he asked. "Just drinks," she replied. "With a few people." "A few people," he repeated softly. She met his eyes through the mirror. "Yeah." A pause. "Then, do you know Marcus Hale?" Adrian asked. The room shifted, not visibly, but undeniably. Lena's hand froze mid-motion. Just for a second, but it was enough. "Marcus," she repeated, her tone carefully neutral. "Why?" Adrian shrugged slightly, stepping into the room. "He came up in a project I'm working on. Another lie." "I think I've met him once," she said, turning back to the mirror. "At some event." "Why?" "Just curious." He watched her closely. She didn't turn around again. Didn't meet his eyes. "Should I know something?" she added lightly. Adrian smiled. "No." But the word lingered in the air longer than it should have. Later that night, Adrian sat alone in the living room, the city lights stretching endlessly beyond the glass. His phone rested on the table beside him. A single contact open. Marcus Hale. It hadn't been difficult to find. Men like Marcus were easy to reach, if you knew where to look. Adrian stared at the name for a long time, then locked the phone. Not yet. Across the city, Lena stood outside a hotel room door. Her hand hovered just inches from the handle. Her breathing uneven, her thoughts tangled, guilt, desire, fear, all coexisting in the same fragile space. Inside, Marcus waited, calm, certain. A life that felt simpler, easier, but not real. Lena closed her eyes just for a moment. Then she opened the door. Back in the penthouse, Adrian stood by the window once more, silent, still, but no longer uncertain. He knew the name, he knew the truth, and yet he felt nothing explode inside him. No shouting, no breaking, just a slow, controlled descent into something far more dangerous. Understanding, and with it intent. The discovery hadn't destroyed him, it had changed him. Nothing changed. At least that's what it looked like. The apartment remained immaculate. The routine stayed intact. Morning coffee, quiet dinners, polite conversation drifting between them like something rehearsed too many times. But beneath it, everything had shifted. Adrian no longer searched for answers. He waited for them. There was a difference, a profound one. He moved through his days with a precision that bordered on unnatural. Every gesture measured, Every word chosen, every reaction intentional. He watched Lena the way a strategist watches an opponent, not with suspicion anymore, but with understanding. And patience. Dangerous, quiet patience. "Are you working late tonight?" Lena's voice came from the kitchen light, but edged with something careful. Adrian looked up from his laptop, his expression calm. "Maybe," he said. "Why?" She leaned casually against the counter, arms folded. "Just wondering." A simple exchange, but she held his gaze a second too long, like she was searching for something. A crack, a clue, anything. Adrian offered a faint smile. "Do you want me to come home early?" There it was. The test. Lena hesitated, and in that hesitation everything spoke. "No," she said quickly. "I just thought you've been distant lately." Distant. Adrian almost smiled wider at that. "You think so? I mean," she shrugged lightly, "you're just quieter." Quieter, not colder, not suspicious, not angry. She didn't have the words for it, because what she felt wasn't absence, it was presence, too much of it, focused, unblinking. "I've just had a lot on my mind," Adrian said. True. More true than anything he had told her in weeks. Lena nodded slowly, but her expression didn't settle, because something in his tone, it didn't invite comfort. It closed the door on it. That night, Lena left the apartment at exactly 8:17 p.m. Adrian noted the time without looking at a clock. He didn't follow her, didn't check her location, didn't need to, because the pattern was already clear. Instead, he poured himself a glass of whiskey and stood by the window watching the city unfold below him. His reflection stared back, sharp, composed, unreadable. He lifted the glass slightly, not in celebration, not in defeat, just acknowledgement of what was. The shift in Adrian didn't go unnoticed. It couldn't. Lena felt it in the way he looked at her now, not longer, not harder, but deeper, as if he was seeing something beyond what she showed, as if he was waiting for her to reveal it herself, and that was worse than confrontation, because silence left room for imagination, and imagination was cruel. Did I do something wrong? The question came out one evening, soft but strained. They were sitting across from each other at the dining table, untouched plates between them. Adrian looked up slowly. "No." Lena frowned. "Then why does it feel like you're somewhere else?" He held her gaze, long enough to make her shift in her seat. "I'm right here," he said. And somehow that felt like a lie. Days blurred into each other, but the tension didn't fade. It sharpened. Lena began to change too, not in the way she had before, not in secrecy or distraction, but in awareness. She became more careful, more present, as if trying to compensate for something she couldn't fully name. She touched him more often, small gestures, a hand on his arm, a kiss lingering a second longer. But Adrian noticed something in those moments. It wasn't connection. It was reassurance. She wasn't reaching for him. She was checking if he was still there. One night as they lay in bed, Lena turned toward him. "Do you love me?" The question came out of nowhere. Or maybe it had been building for weeks. Adrian didn't answer immediately. He stared at the ceiling, the faint glow of city lights casting shadows across the room. Then, yes. The word was simple, clean, but it lacked something, warmth, certainty. Lena felt it. She always did. "Then why does it feel like you're slipping away?" she whispered. Adrian turned his head slightly, looking at her in the dim light. "I could ask you the same thing." Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Lena's breath caught. Just slightly. But she said nothing, because she didn't know how much he knew. Across the city, Marcus leaned back in his chair, phone pressed to his ear. "She's starting to panic," Lena's voice whispered through the line. About what he asked calmly. "He's different," she said. "Adrian, he's not reacting. He's not asking questions. It's like he's just watching." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, "That's not panic," he said. "That's control." Lena swallowed. "What does that mean?" It means he knows something, Marcus replied. Or he's close. A pause. Cold. Measured. You need to decide what you want, he continued. Because if he's already figured it out, this doesn't end quietly. Lena closed her eyes. I never wanted to hurt him. No one ever does, Marcus said, but they still do. Back in the penthouse, Adrian stood alone in the dark. No lights, no movement, just the faint glow of the city reflecting in the glass. His phone rested in his hand. Marcus Hale's contact still open, unanswered, unused, for now. Adrian stared at the name, not with anger, not with hesitation, but with clarity. Everything was in place. The truth, the pattern, the silence, and now, the waiting was almost over. Because silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. And Adrian had already made his move. Lena just didn't know it yet. It didn't begin with desire. At least that's not how Lena remembered it. It began with being seen. The first time Marcus Hale truly noticed her wasn't at a party or a crowded gala. It was in a quieter moment, almost forgettable. A charity fundraiser. Too many voices. Too many practiced smiles. Lena had been standing near the bar, her glass untouched, her attention drifting somewhere far from the room. Adrian had been across the floor, deep in conversation, animated, confident, exactly as he always was. Perfect. Unreachable. You look like you'd rather be anywhere else. The voice had come from beside her. Calm. Low. Certain. She turned. Marcus stood there, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass of whiskey. His gaze wasn't intrusive, but it was direct, honest in a way that caught her off guard. I didn't realize it was that obvious, she replied, offering a polite smile. It's not, he said. Most people just don't look closely. And that was the beginning. The memories came in fragments now, disconnected, yet somehow more real than anything in her present. A quiet lunch that stretched too long. I feel like I'm living someone else's life, Lena had admitted, staring down at her plate. Marcus hadn't interrupted, hadn't rushed to fill the silence. He simply listened. Adrian is good, she continued. He's successful, reliable, everything you're supposed to want. But Marcus asked gently. Lena hesitated, because saying it out loud made it real. Sometimes I feel like I don't exist in that life, she whispered. Like I'm just part of the structure. Something that fits. Not something that's felt. Marcus leaned back slightly, studying her. And with me? He asked. The question lingered. Dangerous. Honest. Lena looked up. Her voice was barely above a breath. I feel seen. Another moment, another place. A hotel room overlooking the city lights, flickering like distant signals. Lena stood by the window, arms wrapped around herself. This isn't who I am, she said. Marcus sat behind her, calm as ever. It's exactly who you are, he replied. You're just not pretending here. She shook her head. I never meant for it to happen. Things like this don't just happen, Lena Marcus said quietly. They build. Slowly, quietly. Until you can't ignore them anymore. She turned toward him, her eyes conflicted. Then why does it feel like I'm losing everything? Marcus didn't answer right away. Because the truth wasn't comforting. Because you are, he said finally. Back in the present, Lena sat across from Marcus again, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. The same bar, the same dim lighting. But something had changed. Not in him, in her. I can't breathe around him anymore, she said, her voice tight. Adrian doesn't yell. He doesn't ask questions. He just looks at me. Marcus watched her carefully. And that scares you? Yes. Why? Lena exhaled shakily. Because I don't know what he knows. A pause. Heavy, unavoidable. Marcus leaned forward slightly. Then maybe it's time you decide what you're willing to lose, he said. Lena's eyes filled not with tears, but with something more complicated. Regret. I never wanted to choose, she whispered. Marcus's expression softened just barely. No one ever does. At home, the distance between Lena and Adrian had become something tangible, not loud, not explosive, but present, always present. "Do you want to watch something?" Lena asked one evening, standing in the doorway of the living room. Adrian glanced up from his phone. "Sure." She sat beside him, close but not quite touching. They scrolled through options, neither really paying attention. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable, not natural. Something in between. Lena shifted slightly, her hand brushing against his. He didn't pull away, but he didn't respond either. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but she felt it. That absence. And suddenly it hit her harder than any argument could have. "You're different," she said quietly. Adrian didn't look at her. "People change. That's not what I mean." "Then what do you mean?" Lena swallowed. "I feel like I'm sitting next to someone who already left." That made him pause, just for a second. "Then maybe you are." The words were calm, measured, but they landed with quiet force. Lena's chest tightened, because in that moment she realized something she hadn't allowed herself to see before. She wasn't the only one drifting away. Later that night, Lena stood alone in the bathroom, staring at her reflection. Her phone buzzed in her hand. Marcus. She didn't answer. Not immediately, because for the first time the space she had been escaping from was following her. Across the apartment, Adrian stood by the window once more, still, silent, watching the city stretch endlessly before him. But tonight there was something different in his expression, not just awareness, not just control, resolution. The affair hadn't just revealed Lena's truth, it had revealed his, and now there was no turning back. The invitation arrived 3 days earlier. A private dinner, upper floor, limited guests. The kind of event where names mattered more than numbers, where conversations carried weight long after the night ended. Lena had almost declined. Almost. But Adrian had answered before she could. "We'll be there." 2 simple words. Final. The venue overlooked the Chicago River, its glass walls reflecting a city that never truly slept. Inside, everything was curated to perfection. Soft jazz, dim, golden lighting waiters, moving with practiced precision. It was the kind of place where nothing was accidental, including who was invited. Lena adjusted the strap of her dress as they stepped inside, her breath shallow, her composure fragile beneath the surface. "You look nervous," Adrian said quietly beside her. His tone wasn't mocking. It wasn't warm either, just observant. "I'm not," she replied too quickly. Adrian glanced at her, then smiled. Not kindly. Good. They hadn't even reached the center of the room when Lena felt it. That shift, that awareness, the kind that prickles at the back of your neck before your eyes confirm it. Marcus stood near the far end, engaged in conversation with a small group. He looked exactly as he always did, effortless, composed, untouched by the chaos he quietly created. But when his eyes lifted, they landed on her. And stayed. For half a second too long. Then they moved to Adrian, and something unspoken passed between them. Not recognition, not surprise, something sharper, understanding. "Adrian Cole." Marcus's voice came smooth as glass as he approached, hand extended. Adrian took it. Firm. Measured. "Marcus Hale," he replied. 2 men, 2 calm expressions, and beneath them a war already unfolding. "I've heard a lot about your work," Marcus continued. "The Riverside Project impressive." "Funding helps," Adrian said lightly. A pause. Subtle, but deliberate. Marcus smiled faintly. It usually does. Lena stood between them, silent, composed, and completely exposed. "Lena," Marcus said, turning to her, his tone shifting just slightly. "You look beautiful." It was a normal compliment. Expected. But in that moment, it wasn't. "Thank you," she replied, her voice steady only by effort. Adrian glanced at her, then back at Marcus. "You 2 know each other?" he asked. The question landed softly. Too softly. "Yes," Lena answered before Marcus could. "We met a while ago, at an event, right?" Adrian nodded. "You mentioned that." Marcus watched him carefully now. Because something in Adrian's tone, it didn't ask. It confirmed. Dinner began. Courses arrived and disappeared. Conversations flowed. Laughter echoed lightly across the room. But at their table, everything felt contained, measured. Every glance carried weight. Every silence stretched longer than it should. Lena could feel it in the way Adrian held himself relaxed, but too still. Engaged, but never distracted. Present. Entirely present. And Marcus noticed it too. "You've been quiet tonight," Marcus said casually, sipping his drink as he looked at Adrian. "Just listening," Adrian replied. "Learn anything interesting?" Adrian's gaze met his. Yes. A pause. Barely a second, but it lingered. Marcus smiled slightly. "Care to share?" Adrian leaned back in his chair, his expression calm. "Not yet." Lena's fingers tightened around her glass beneath the table, because this wasn't coincidence. It wasn't chance. This was something else, something controlled, constructed, and she was standing right in the center of it. At one point, she excused herself. The air felt too heavy, too thin. She moved quickly toward the restroom, her reflection catching briefly in the mirrored walls, composed on the outside, unraveling underneath. The door closed behind her. Silence. Finally. She gripped the edge of the sink, her breathing uneven. "What are you doing?" she whispered to herself. But there was no answer, only the echo of everything she had tried not to face. When she returned, they were alone, Adrian and Marcus, standing near the window, talking, quietly. Lena slowed her steps. Her pulse quickened, because something about the scene, it didn't feel casual, it felt inevitable. "You ever notice," Adrian was saying as she approached, "how people think they're careful until they're not?" Marcus's expression didn't change. Careful about what? Adrian turned slightly, his gaze flicking toward Lena for just a moment before returning to Marcus. "Details," he said. "Patterns. Small things." A pause. Then, "They always give themselves away, eventually." The words settled into the space between them, heavy, unavoidable. Marcus held his gaze. Not defensive, not shaken, but aware, deeply aware. "Only if someone's looking closely enough," he replied. Adrian smiled. "That's the thing," he said. "I am." Silence, not empty, charged, alive with everything unsaid. Lena stepped closer, her presence breaking the moment, but not the tension. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. Adrian looked at her, and for the first time that night there was something unmistakable in his eyes. Not anger, not pain, clarity. "Yes," he said, "everything's perfectly clear." The rest of the evening passed like a slow descent, polite goodbyes, measured smiles, controlled exits. But the illusion, it was gone. In the car, Lena stared out the window, her reflection ghosting against the glass. Adrian drove in silence, hands steady on the wheel, eyes forward. "Do you want to say something?" she asked finally. He didn't look at her, no. A pause. Then, "When there's something to say, I will." That was worse than anything else, because Lena knew that moment was coming. Back in the penthouse, Adrian stepped inside and loosened his tie, his movements calm, almost routine. But his mind sharp, focused, resolved. Tonight hadn't been confrontation. Not yet. It had been confirmation. And now there was nothing left to question, only what came next. The night didn't end when they got home. It settled, like something heavy finally finding its place. Adrian didn't turn on the lights. The apartment remained dim, illuminated only by the distant glow of the city filtering through glass. It cast long shadows across the floor, distorted, shifting like reflections of something already broken. Lena stood near the entrance, her heels still on her coat, still draped over her shoulders. She hadn't moved, because she knew this was it. Adrian walked past her, slowly setting his keys down with quiet precision. No sudden movements, no raised voice. That was the worst part. "Take off your coat," he said calmly. Lena blinked, caught off guard by the normalcy of the request. "What, you look uncomfortable," he added, loosening his tie. "Take it off." Her hands moved automatically, slipping the coat from her shoulders, folding it over her arm, like she had done 1,000 times before. Routine, safe. But nothing about this felt safe anymore. "Sit," Adrian said, gesturing toward the couch. Not an order. Not quite. But not a suggestion either. Lena hesitated, then obeyed. Because something in his voice, it left no room for anything else. He didn't sit across from her. He didn't stand over her. Instead, he moved to the side, leaning lightly against the wall. Close enough, but not close enough to touch. Distance. Measured. Intentional. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Until Lena couldn't take it anymore. Adrian, just say it. Her voice cracked not loudly but enough. Enough to betray everything she had been holding back. He looked at her. Finally. Fully. And when he spoke, his voice was steady, almost gentle. Say what Lena let out a shaky breath, her hands tightening in her lap. You know, she whispered. A pause. Then yes. Adrian said, I do. The words didn't explode. They landed. Quiet, final, irreversible. Lena closed her eyes. For a second, just a second, as if that could undo it, as if silence could take it back. But it couldn't. Nothing could. How long, Adrian asked. No accusation, no emotion, just a question, precise, targeted. Lena swallowed. Her throat felt dry. Months, she said. The truth. Unfiltered. Adrian nodded once, like he had expected it. Who another question, even though he already knew. But this was about hearing it. From her. Marcus, Lena said, her voice barely audible. Marcus Hale. There it was. Spoken. Real. Adrian exhaled slowly. Not in relief, not in anger, just acknowledgement. Did you love him? The question came without hesitation. And somehow, that was the one that broke her. I don't know, Lena said, her voice trembling now. I didn't mean for it to. That's not what I asked. His tone didn't rise, but it sharpened, cutting clean through everything else. Lena's eyes filled, but no tears fell. Not yet, because this wasn't about emotion. This was about truth. I felt something she admitted, something I didn't feel anymore with you. The words hung in the air, heavy, unforgiving. Adrian didn't react immediately. He just watched her. As if committing every detail to memory, every word, every pause, every fracture. Why, he asked. And this time there was something beneath it. Not anger, not blame, something deeper, something human. Lena shook her head slowly. I don't know when it started, she said. I just felt invisible, Adrian. Like I was part of your life, but not in it. Her voice broke slightly now. I was there, but you weren't really with me. Not anymore. Adrian's jaw tightened. Just slightly. So you found someone who made you feel seen, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Lena whispered. Silence again. But this time it wasn't empty. It was full. Of everything that had led them here. Adrian pushed himself off the wall, walking slowly toward the window. His back to her now. The city stretched out before him, indifferent, endless. You could have told me, he said quietly. Lena's breath caught. I tried, she said. In ways you didn't hear. Adrian nodded faintly. Maybe he admitted. A pause. Then, but you still chose this. There it was, the line that separated everything, what was broken and what was chosen. I didn't want to hurt you, Lena said, her voice trembling more now. Adrian let out a soft breath. No one ever does. The same words Marcus had said. But from Adrian they felt different, heavier. Lena finally broke. The tears came silently slipping down her face as she sat there unable to move, unable to fix what had already collapsed. I'm sorry, she whispered. The words sounded small, insufficient, because they were. Adrian turned back to her, and for the first time there was emotion in his eyes. Not rage, not even hatred. Something far more devastating. Clarity. I know, he said, and somehow that was worse than if he had shouted. Is there anything left? Lena asked, her voice barely holding together. For us. The question lingered. Fragile, desperate. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. Really looked. At the woman he had built a life with. At the person who had slowly become a stranger. Yes, he said finally. Hope flickered just for a second. Truth, he continued, and now we have it. The hope disappeared just like that. Lena's shoulders trembled, the weight of everything settling in. What happens now, she asked. Adrian didn't answer right away, because this wasn't a moment decision. It was the end of a long one. Finally, I leave, he said. Simple. Final. Lena's breath caught sharply. No, Adrian, please. But he shook his head, not harshly, not angrily, just decisively. You already did, he said. The words landed with quiet devastation, because they were true. Adrian walked past her, heading toward the bedroom. No rush, no hesitation, just movement. Forward. Lena sat there unable to follow, unable to stop him. because deep down, she knew. This wasn't a fight, it was an ending. And some endings don't come with noise, they come with silence. And the unbearable weight of knowing it can't be undone. The apartment felt different in the morning, not emptier, just quieter, as if something essential had been removed, not violently, not suddenly, but with careful intention. Adrian was already dressed when Lena stepped out of the bedroom. He stood near the window, his suitcase placed neatly by the door. The same skyline stretched before him, unchanged, indifferent to what had unraveled overnight. For a moment, Lena just stood there, watching him, memorizing him. Because something inside her already knew this wasn't temporary. "You're leaving now?" she asked, her voice fragile, thinner than it had ever been. Adrian turned slightly, meeting her eyes. "Yes." No hesitation. No softness added to ease the blow. Just truth. Lena took a step forward, then stopped. As if there was an invisible line she no longer had the right to cross. "You didn't sleep," she said quietly. "I did," Adrian replied. A lie, but a necessary one. Because what he had done wasn't resting, it was deciding. "I meant what I said," Lena continued, her hands trembling faintly at her sides. "I never wanted to lose you." Adrian studied her for a moment. And there it was again, that strange, unbearable calm. "I believe you," he said. And he did. That was the tragedy. "Then why does it feel like you're already gone?" she asked, her voice breaking just slightly. Adrian glanced at the suitcase, then back at her. "Because I am." The words didn't rise. They didn't need to. They settled into the space between them, final, undeniable. Lena's breath hitched, her chest tightening as the reality closed in. "What about everything we built?" she whispered. "Does that just disappear?" Adrian shook his head faintly. "No," he said. "It stays." A pause. Then, but not in a way that lets us keep living in it. Silence. Heavy, unforgiving. Lena looked around the apartment, the furniture, the photographs, the life they had constructed piece by piece. It was all still there, untouched. But suddenly, it felt like a museum, something preserved, not lived in. "I can fix this," she said suddenly, desperation creeping into her voice. "I can end it. I can—" "It's already ended," Adrian interrupted gently. "Not her affair. Their marriage." Lena flinched as if the words had weight, because they did. "I don't love him more than you," she said quickly, the confession spilling out now unfiltered. "It wasn't about that. It was just, I know," Adrian said. And again, that made it worse, because he understood. And still he was leaving. He reached for his suitcase, gripping the handle. Not tightly, not dramatically, just enough. "Adrian," Lena's voice cracked fully now. "Please don't do this like it means nothing." He paused, finally. And for the first time, something shifted in his expression. Not doubt, not regret, but something close to grief. "It doesn't mean nothing," he said quietly. "It means everything." Lena's tears fell freely, now silent and uncontrollable. "Then stay," she whispered. Adrian looked at her, really looked. At the woman he had loved. At the life he had chosen. At the version of everything that no longer existed. "I can't," he said. And that was the truth neither of them could escape. He walked to the door, each step measured, final. But before he opened it, he stopped. Without turning around, he spoke. "You said you felt invisible." Lena's breath caught. "I didn't see it," he continued. A pause. "I should have." Her knees weakened slightly, her hand gripping the edge of the table for support. "Adrian, but you didn't tell me the way that mattered," he added softly. "And I didn't listen the way I should have." For a moment, it almost sounded like forgiveness. But it wasn't. "It doesn't change what you chose," he said. And just like that, the distance returned. Clear, uncrossable. The door opened. Lena took a step forward instinctively. "Will I ever see you again?" The question came out broken, uncertain. Adrian hesitated, just for a second. "Yes," he said eventually. Not a promise, not a comfort, just a possibility. Then he stepped out, and the door closed behind him with a quiet, definitive click. The sound echoed through the apartment, louder than it should have been. Lena stood there staring at the door long after he was gone, as if waiting for it to open again, as if this could still be undone. But it didn't. Hours passed, then more. The light shifted slowly across the floor, stretching, fading, disappearing. Still, she didn't move much. At some point, her phone buzzed. Once, then again. Marcus. She stared at the name for a long time. Her thumb hovered over the screen, the same way it had so many times before. But this time it felt different. Not exciting, not comforting, not even tempting. Just empty. She let it ring, then stop, then fade into silence. Because for the first time she understood. Marcus had never been the answer. He had just been the escape. And now there was nowhere left to escape to. The apartment felt larger as night fell. Quieter, colder. Lena walked slowly to the window, standing where Adrian had stood so many times before. The city was still alive, still moving, still indifferent. Her reflection stared back at her, but it didn't feel like the same person. She touched the glass lightly, as if grounding herself in something real, something that remained. But there wasn't much left. Just silence. Just memory. Just the weight of choices that couldn't be undone. Somewhere out there, Adrian was starting over. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with the same quiet strength he had always carried. Marcus would move on, untouched, unchanged, a chapter closed without consequence. But Lena stayed. With the truth, with the absence, with the understanding that some things don't break all at once. They fade, they fracture, they disappear slowly, until all that remains is the echo of what once was, of what